It's a great privilege to be with you here and have the opportunity to meet you. I want to make a special thank you to John for the kind introduction, but above all to say that I'm here to listen. I'm a new Defra minister. My job is to champion your industry and support you, but there's obviously about 10,000 times more knowledge and experience in this room than there is in my head, and I'm hoping that over the next few years I can learn from you, learn specifically what challenges you face and what we can do in the government to try to help you. It's also, I think, important to just lay out very briefly, and I hope we can have some time for a couple of questions at the end, why this matters to the government. And a lot of this will be very, very familiar to you, but I think it's just worth taking it back to basics and what it is that we really care about and where we come from on this. Of course, where we begin is the fact that we now understand much more in our generation than maybe people understood in previous generations, just how limited our resources are. We understand much better than we used to how much we're using of the water in the world, the fact that food production alone is using about 70% of the world's water, that we're realizing that various materials that we felt maybe in the 19th century were almost limitless are in fact very limited, that our global population is growing very quickly, and that all of this is going to mean that if we are to keep humans on Earth for the next few 100 million years, which I think we'd hope we could, this industry and the work that you do is going to be absolutely central to keeping us all going. To take just one example, which some of you will be familiar with, others of you maybe not, if you look at indium, which is a critical metal, it was $200 per kilo 10 years ago. It's now $800 per kilo today. And that's just one example of indicators right across the board of the way in which we're putting pressure on different resources. You, though, in particular, and this is why I'm very proud to be here, are a very remarkable industry and should be very proud of what you're contributing to the United Kingdom. Some people, I guess, outside the room, the focus is particularly on how it affects customers and households, in particular collecting rubbish. But it's the innovation, of course, which is beginning to excite other people in this room. I can see there are people in the room who are journalists, who are from green NGOs, who are designers, who are from local councils. And whether it's all the things that you again are more familiar with than I am, turning plastic bottles into fleeces, generating energy from waste. Currently we're using food waste and anaerobic digestion plants that can generate 6.5 megawatts, enough to power 15,000 homes from a single plant. You're employing, as you know, 103,000 people. You generated £6.8 billion to gross value added in 2013. And whichever end of the industry people in this room are working with, your job really matters. Without it, our lives would be worse off, and our planet, frankly, would be worse off. When you think about this also, I think it's quite easy now that we're in the modern world to forget how far we've come. At the time when people were coming in and out of this building in the early 20th century, waste management in London had become so problematic that people were predicting that by the 1920s it was going to be necessary to abandon London. And in fact, one of the theories at the time was that the horse manure in the streets of London, this is the early 20th century, would have become so deep that the city would become uninhabitable. And just to produce a really stark extreme example, which goes a long way beyond this room, I've experienced this very directly myself. I lived in Afghanistan for 3.5 years, working in an NGO in the center of the city of Kabul, where there was no waste management. There had been no waste management in those two city blocks for a period of about 20 years. By the time I got there, the garbage was literally 7 feet deep in the streets. People were climbing over their courtyard walls to get into their houses. Their doors had become locked up with garbage. And I could see there for 3.5 years working with that community what that means to people's lives. It meant that adult life expectancy in that part of the city was 37. 1 in 5 children were dying before the age of 5. All commerce and industry in that part of the city had collapsed completely. This had been the extraordinary silver bazaar of the old city of Kabul had basically been abandoned. As we began to clear that away and recycle it, we dropped the street level by 6 or 7 feet. We provided employment to every unemployed adult male in that part of the city. We drove up the life expectancy. We dropped the infant mortality. We were able to bring in a clinic which now sees 23,000 patients a year. Business and industry is taking off again. Big community of drug users who used to hang around in that part of the city and now no longer hang around in that part of the city. And every indicator from tourism through to the economy is turning around because of one thing, which is waste management. So I'm coming from a world in which I see really rawly and directly what happens if you guys are not doing your job correctly. So I wanted to say a huge thank you for the fact that we're not facing those kind of problems in this country. The plastic recycling sector has faced a very challenging year with the fall in oil prices. I'm pleased that the Plastic Industry Action Plan was launched last week, and it's great the industry has come together and has already delivered a doubling in the recycling of plastic packaging over the last 12 years. But none of this means that the government or anyone in this room should be complacent. Recycling Week this week is a great opportunity to continue to call for more action by householders and businesses. We have to improve our recycling rates, not just in quantity, but in quality as well. I'm delighted that WRAP is now relaunching their Recycle Now campaign. We have to work not just on recycling, but also preventing the waste emerging in the first place. So I'm very proud that WRAP has released the details of projects for innovation in the Waste Prevention Fund. These range from initiatives to help primary schools to set up pupil-run clothing exchange shops, to shops distributing food and events in the Southwest, including Glastonbury. And all of these are helping us move towards the circular economy as soon as we can. As you all know, the European Commission is now pushing very hard, calling for a circular economy to be delivered right across Europe. We're awaiting new proposals from the Commission to come out later this year, but meanwhile, we are moving hard in the British government and with you to look at developing a new package of measures that are going to be more ambitious, I'm sure, than those that have been set out before. Above all, we have to make sure that whatever the Commission comes up with is right for the UK. So again, we're going to have to listen very carefully to you to make sure that you look very closely at those proposals out of the Commission for a circular economy to make sure they meet our particular conditions and your particular businesses. Some of you came into Defra on Friday to begin to discuss the recent Commission consultation. I know my officials who are here in the room found those consultations very useful. Please let me know if you were in that meeting on Friday, if there's any more that we can do, if there's any more that I can do, any more that officials can do to follow up on that first stage of the consultation. It's also increasingly important for us to work with the devolved governments. So there's been fantastic lead in a lot of these issues out of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. I'm delighted that Richard Lockhead MP will be addressing you tomorrow on the work that we've been developing in Scotland. As you know, there are different approaches being taken in these different devolved administrations, but I think we have to learn from each other, and above all, we need to make sure that when we engage with the European Commission, we engage with a unified voice.